Yeah, hello and welcome to this CRAM session on Unit 2. I'm Eric Beckman. I'm very excited to be here with you. I'm going to pop a little poll up so we can kind of see where people are coming from, and I can introduce myself then at that time. This is my first time streaming on Vimeo, but I have done a lot of streaming for Fiveable, and of course, I stream for school now every day. I was reflecting recently on how this used to be kind of a unique thing a couple years ago when I first went live, when Melissa was, and I both started around the same time. I might have been a little bit after her, but then now it's like, hey, this is just something that happens every day. So I'm going to open a poll up. Right. Hopefully, I feel like there might be some tornadoes in the chat. So I have opened the polling here. I've got, it's an above average number of windows open, but, not really for a school day, I guess. I'll share my screen in a moment. It's just a way to kind of see what we have going on. Okay, come on in. Thank you. Good to see you. Good. Yeah, we're not on break yet. That would have been another good question coming in to kind of see. Got a few different possibilities here. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Eric Beckman. Like I said, I live in the north. You can also rep your region in the chat if you want. I know Melissa's a big advocate of the lifestyle in the Pacific Northwest. So, and in Minnesota, we have recently apparently decided to call ourselves the North. It's a way to kind of secede from Iowa and the Dakotas in the popular imagination, I think. So, hey, Alexa, very good. Nice to see you. All right, I should put up the chat though, since I just said a name and there's a disclaimer there. So I'm going to share my screen. There you are. Yeah, you can go region, right? However you want to think of your local. Whoa, I love it when it's international in the AP World CRAM. I love that. Oh, yeah, right. I'm going to share my screen here. I got some different possibilities. And we'll get going. So today we're looking at Unit 1. And as Melissa said on Saturday, I was in that session. If your teacher did or did not use the unit numbers for the units, if they didn't use those at all, like you might be Unit 2, what is that? Like my kids, I basically never say those. And they're not at a disadvantage. If your teacher used them all the time, you're also not at a disadvantage. So don't worry about that. This is how the curriculum is packaged for teachers to use, but it isn't the order that you need to do it in. And you'll see there's a lot of overlap. Any way that you do a world history class, there is going to be some overlap. Meaning there's events that are happening at the same time that you're not going to cover, in the same week even. So this topic here is on networks of exchange. So it'll include a lot of the things from Saturday's stream, which you can watch archived with your CRAM passes. Let's take a look here and see what people think about springtime. It looks like it is pretty evened up. Yep, we got, right, no snow in some places. Some people don't even experience spring. This one time I lived in California, and I got to tell you, it didn't really have the seasons like I was used to. So there we go. Take a look. Taking a look here at our next slide. You should all think this is the one I have to show. So just a note that this is being recorded and will be published different places. In fact, I just recommended a CRAM. Well, those are more of a review. It wasn't part of the official CRAM package, but from last spring that's on the site from Djenne, who has a lot of really good advice on multiple choice questions. So those of you in my class, that came out over the Google Classroom. So just so you know, if you ask a question, your name will appear on the screen. If you want to change your chat name to something, to change your identity, that's always an option. Fiveable is available across the social media platforms, and there's even more than this out there, I'm told. So you might, you might give something like that a look. Okay. And here's what we have coming up. So this Saturday, Melissa will be streaming again with Unit 3, which is land-based empires from 1450 to 1750. And then I'll be back in the following week for Unit 4. I wound up with the connections ones, which is just kind of how it happens. We pick dates, that worked best for us. So I'll be back on the 18th to take a look at connections between places. So that's like transoceanic connections, things what it's officially called. There'll be a lot of sailing talk. And then we'll see coming back then for Unit 5, the following week. So just keep it coming. And after every stream, the party just rolls into Discord. Some people call that the after party. So you're at the party. We also invite you to come to the after party in Discord. And then finally, the links are live in the slides that get shared as part of the stream. But there are trivia, practice, competition, good times going on, as you can see there. And so the one that relates to this unit's content will be tomorrow at a reasonable time for the West Coast peeps. Maybe a little getting really edging onto my bedtime. I mean, in Central Time, I'm okay, but I know you kids stay up a little later. So take a peek there. The good thing about trivia, has anyone done trivia? Maybe share your trivia responses. The good thing about trivia from a like psychology, like brain functioning standpoint, is you're practicing recalling. I mean, the thing to remember is that when you take the test, you're going to need to remember information. So anything you could do to practice recalling is all right. As long as you don't beat yourself up if you don't know everything, because you don't have to know everything, but you have to know something. And so this is a good way to practice what you know. Okay. We're going to take a look at an image now. So now we're going to dig in. Here is a Keynote image that I have for you. And I'd like you to go ahead and put some answers into the chat. It's a famous image. It's one of the, history of the world in 100 objects. So in this case, this is a collection of objects. Today I learned that shards is actually a word. That's not just misspelled shards. I changed it first, then searched the internet, changed it back. Shards is like shards, but for pottery. So what does this tell us? Yes, it is. Yeah, thank you. We are rolling. I believe the stream is starting. We got a question in there. Rika, can you all hear me? Like, I've not done this. Yeah. Right, it's not. Someone had porcelain up. Right. Yeah, but it's okay if you think of where this might be, right? So we have trade. This is networks of exchange. Right. Very good. Yeah, right. And where's the porcelain from? It looks like somebody had it there. Now, where was this porcelain found? All right. Yeah. Well, yeah, glazes and stuff too. Yeah, it's good. It's happening. The porcelain, as I tell the students, when you have the name of a product that's also the name of your country, you have it on lockdown. So people in English, the English language calls this stuff China. It's like, well, I think we have it going on. They did, but not yet. Yep, the porcelain is a big Chinese export. That's going to be a continuity, to use some of our language from last week, and it made its way all the way to East Africa. Okay, and so how do we know that it's from China? Well, it resembles other artifacts from China, and also there's some scientific testing that can be done on materials like this now to look for kind of radioactive signatures. I only barely know what that means, but there are chemical tests that can be done and determine that the clay and the materials used in this are from China or are similar to ones from China. Yeah, there we go. So here's what we're going to do. One of the things that I like to do with CRAM reviews and even with other reviews is to look at the powerful vocabulary for a particular topic. So I'm going to start there. At the end of the stream at the end of the stream, we're going to take a look at, at the end of the stream on Saturday, people identified regional trade networks as the thing that got the highest votes at the end. And so I thought I would go ahead and we could take a look at that here. I'll only spend a little bit of time on what that means. I think once you know, it'll put some minds at ease. And then we'll mostly focus on the 3 networks that you have to know, and then the Mongols. Okay, we ready? All right. Now those pottery shards did not show the Silk Road, so we'll see if we can get which one it is. All right. Here is the big idea, which comes from the College Board website, or really from their course and exam description. So we're going to be looking at deepening and widening. So networks of human interaction within and across regions. So that's that regional trade networks, which contributed to cultural, technological, and biological diffusion. So let's go ahead and unpack that. Deepening means more goods traveling over the same routes. So these routes existed. It's a continuity. So that Silk Roads route that people know about, that would have existed prior to this time. But more goods will be traveling on it. Widening means that the reach of the networks is expanding. So East Africa was connected into the Indian Ocean trade route, but those pottery shards are from Kilwa, so that's further south than had been regularly part of the routes in previous times. So that's what widening would mean. Okay. Within and across regions, so within the regions and between them, and then different kinds of diffusion. It's important to know that this is an interactive relationship, a reflexive relationship, each affecting each other with productive capacity. So you always want to kind of pay attention to that, to how are more things being made. All right. So I'm going to put 4 power vocabulary terms up. So if you're taking any notes on the stream, these would be like the 4 things to get down and then kind of look for them. Now, what I mean by power vocabulary are terms that come from the key concepts and are the kinds of things that can wind up in questions, or they can wind up in answers. So the first one is the cornerstone for this, which is exchange networks. So that means exchange networks are things which connected societies. And I saw when, which trade networks came up, then we're looking at, the question is, people have some answers, right? So you should know some of those. You should know the places that they connected. So an exchange network. A network means it's more than just a point to point. It makes a net or like a web. So there's multiple places being connected. And then exchange means it's more than just trade, although trade's usually kind of at the heart of it. Exchange means there's other things are spreading. Ideas, organisms, goods are moving back and forth in some way. Ooh, a little over clicking there. Okay. Diffusion is an important word. And again, this is a word that could either be in a question or in an answer, or could be in the prompt for a free response question, or could be a word that you use in your answer. So what does diffusion mean? And how, why don't we in the chat there, anyone got some ideas? How is diffusion similar to, but how is it different from especially the idea of trade? So what does it mean when something diffuses? And you can use your science knowledge here. What do we mean by diffuse? If something's diffuse, yeah. We got some things coming in here. All right. Carolyn, we have it down here with from high concentration to low concentration. So that's kind of the science definition. It's how things spread. Yeah, right. And then how is that different from trade? Like what makes it different from trade? Yeah, all those things do. Carla's got some good ideas in there. Right. Yeah, it might syncretize, it might not. There's everything always syncretizes. Like I said this in the chat on Saturday when this came up, but like all religions are syncretic. So, in some way, like all of them. Okay. So there we are. So trade, yeah, is limited to items. That's right. Yep. Good. We have some people are getting some ideas. So diffusion is when things spread. And the important thing to know is that then the things stay in the new place. They don't come back. It's not or they might, but that's not the same as trade. It's not moving around. Like Islam spreads to Southeast Asia, and there's mosques there right now. We have that. Bananas diffuse from Southeast Asia to Africa, and there's the bananas that people are eating in Africa are grown in Africa. They're not traded. They're not trading bananas. It doesn't really start to happen until like the turn of the 20th century. All right. Here's our next power term then is commercial practices. You might be able to think of a couple examples of these. Commercial practices refers to like business techniques or the way that people conduct commerce. And what might be an example of those? It's good to have like a little string of examples you can use, and you never need to know all of them, but it's always good to know some. Yeah, what are some examples? You can like put a right, yeah, there we are. Well, that would be an example today, right? Commercial practices. I would say there's things about Amazon. I assume you mean Amazon.com. That would be a commercial practice. I would say using coerced labor is a labor system and not a commercial practice, although you might be able to massage it in there. It's a kind of labor system. Commercial practice usually is about commerce, exchange. Um, yeah, and you might also kind of do it the other way. Oh, there we are. Banking houses. That's good. Flying cash. I see there. That's going to come up. All right. So we have some ideas, right? So if you want to go real old school on the barter, keep it coming. Okay, good stuff. So we're going to be looking for those. And then transportation technologies. So we're thinking about both land and sea, and often navigation is lumped into it. Okay. I would say Hanseatic League, Victoria, is an example of a regional trade network, and it's a good example of that. However, the Hanseatic merchants were conducting their affairs, so that could be if they were using any kind of accounting system or if they were extending credit to each other, those would be commercial practices. If they were only using coins, if they were using some kind of paper. Okay. So with transportation, we're looking at maritime and land. That word maritime is really useful. Lots of uses. Yeah. Credit cards are a modern form of commercial practice. Thank you, Erica. Okay. So here we go. We're going to take a look at some examples, and you can see if you can identify what it is, and then we'll guess which one of these it illustrates. So does anyone know what that is? Do you think we see here? Okay, you can just put in the chat there. Yeah, which I know what is this? Yeah, kind of nice, right? So then we have the yeah, it is a saddle for camels. Now there's like 9 different kinds of these because you got multiple humps. It depends on where it goes. There's a lot of camel stuff. Yeah. Yeah, so this is an example of transportation technology. Now, with any of these things, you could always hook it into something else, I think, because the camel saddle technology did diffuse to other places. It spread, somebody invented it and it spread to other places. So, okay. Yeah, nice. Right? Caravan, that'd be another word. So you're always thinking of words that are a little more specific. If you could have a more technical category word, like here, transportation technology, and then you attach something specific to it, you're doing a good job. All right, here's another example. We're gonna go do 4 of these, so we'll go a little quicker as we go. Although I'm getting used to, there's a little bit of a lag here. It's different than the immediacy of the Google Meet. So you take a look here. Somebody might even know what that is. And if you did that, right? Thank you, Maddie. Uh-huh. Right. Go. Some of you know my tricks. Yeah, what kind of diffusion would you say this is? What has diffused here? Yeah, religion. Thank you, Ava. A whole weird. It is not Timbuktu, but it is super close. I'm going to count that, Michael, because there is something similar in Timbuktu, and Timbuktu is a noteworthy city. No, it's not contagious. Contagious diffusion would be like pathogens. I would say it is religious. Yeah, what kind of building is this? You know what this is? It's some. I can tell some of you do. He's still standing. Today I learned not just that sherds is a word. I also learned that those are it's palm tree wood that's in there, and it doesn't actually hold it up. It's just there for decoration. Those wood things that stick out. You might have seen one of these, and it's also there for scaffolding, so people can climb around on it to add fresh layers of mud to keep it healthy. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a mosque. Oh, yeah, right. Hey, this is a really hot tip there from Natalie the TA. Thank you, Natalie. And that is that most picture questions are usually also text questions. So if you look at what it says, you can learn some things. This one doesn't help as much, though. This one you really do need to look at the picture and see what's happening. But often reading the text will get it done for you. Here, let's go ahead and vote on this one, because this is one where you might get a few different things. Oh, okay. I'm learning how to do polls. All right, there should be a poll. Nope, that's not the one I want. I want to archive that. I want to show this one. There we go. You can go ahead and vote. That'll give me an idea of how people are doing. I guess it kind of covers it up. But it's from 1349, and it's in what's today Belgium, which is in northwestern Europe, near France. Yeah, this might not be it. Don't worry. Just take your best shot with the voting. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't. Oh, boy. Oh. How about now? Can you see the poll? There's like a lag, and I got it. Oh, no. This is what you call this user error. They are coffins. Thank you, Michael. But I think I overreacted, and I thank you, Natalie. Then I unhit it, so it might pop up. You can just put the answers in the chat. Yeah, sorry about that. It's my bad. Yeah, if it is diffusion, then think about what it is. Thank you, Natalie. Natalie is she's putting the A in TA, and she's assisting me. I need that. Could really kind of use like an army of TAs, like just a small, really like a platoon. Honestly, not a full army. Yeah, we got that. Contagious. Yeah, what's diffusing here? Right. Yeah. Ooh, Black Death. Thank you. I don't even know if I showed this picture in class. Did I, Alex? Um. Yeah, this is biological diffusion, and it shows that. Although it is, Belgium was in a regional trade network that spread the. So if you had trade exchange network, that's not wrong. Um, I think that's good, and diffusion is probably the best answer. But exchange networks is also true, because otherwise, how does this stuff get there? Yeah, I didn't. All right, I got one more. And then we'll move forward, and then we'll get some other. Yep. Be part of the Black Death, which is also called the Second Plague Pandemic. All right. Now this is one where you have to read the script here. So I'll read that in case it's small. What this is a memorial for the first king of the Majapahit Empire, which was based in Java in Southeast Asia. And he was deified in death as half Shiva and half Vishnu. Well, I've recently learned that people say Shiva, so I'm going to try to do that. Shiva and Vishnu, which is a pretty bold combination to go into the afterlife fused together with. Right? Yeah, but what kind do we have here? This one, I think we might get a few different things. Yep, right. There you go. Thanks, Erica. So you have to know a little bit. Yep. Yep. Diffusion. This will be cultural. Right. I traded out some of my images and I wound up with one too many diffusions probably, but diffusion is really important because sometimes people will think that it's trade and we have the religious and the biological. Okay, great. We are perfectly on time here. Yep, so this would be Hinduism, but Buddhism did become more popular in Southeast Asia. Rulers would often take on the Indic, you can say, like as India in general, Indic mythology, pantheon, to use those gods as a way to buttress their own authority. In traditional Hinduism, which just really means the beliefs of people from India, leaving India is not encouraged. However, that this is a long time ago. Think all these religions change. All religions are syncretic. They all evolve. And so there's not as much diffusion of Hinduism as a faith, but because of these networks, Hindu ideas did make their way to Southeast Asia, and then rulers would adopt them as a way to legitimize their authority. So you're like, I founded an empire, and you want to know why it's powerful? Because I am Shiva and Vishnu. And we do that. So this is not Buddhism, but Hinduism and Buddhism are related, and Buddhism definitely spread to Java. Now, today, Java is home to many Muslims. So that's another layer of the exchange that came later. Okay. All right. So at the end of the stream on Saturday, Melissa asked, what were people most interested in learning about? And when regional came up as like a trade network, there was, Silk Roads and Trans-Saharan and Indian Ocean, standbys, classics. And so people asked about that. So I thought one way to think about what's meant by regional, thank you, Erica. What's meant by regional is it's going to be in between local. So if you think of a local exchange network, that's like a marketplace, like a farmer's market. People go and they buy and sell things at the market. What a regional network means then is connecting networks across, obviously a larger region. So within those AP regions, so there is trade happening inside of those. And that's important because some of those regions are quite large. And the wealth that develops from that regional trade will often be what elites use to purchase luxury goods from other regions. So to think about, someone said banking houses before, and banking houses were something that was happening in Europe at this time, at the end of the Middle Ages, and some merchants and bankers were making, bank, quite literally. And so they had extra money that they could use to buy goods. And so they're buying things like cloves from all the way in South Asia and China, or Chinese porcelain or silks, those kinds of things. So the same things would be happening in other places where, like in China, for instance, you have this large internal market, which leads to profits and surplus. And some of that stuff's exported, and it also leads to people purchasing goods from other places. All right. And then interregional, what interregional means is that it is obviously between regions. And so those are the ones that get the starring, they get the names because they have another name that isn't the region. Like trading within Europe is European. And then someone said Hanseatic League before. That's a term that some of you might know, which is in the Baltic Sea. So that's like a, sub-regional network. It's within one part of Europe, northeastern Europe. All right, so here's a way to think of it. If we take a look at this. So this is a map of trade networks from the, just before our time period that we're looking at. So that one that's circled there, would we call that local regional, or interregional? No, interregional is bigger. Interregional is between regions. Yeah, thank you. Oh, Melissa, yay. So we see that. So this would be a regional trade network because it shows connections between places. Now, sometimes the difference between regional and interregional isn't necessarily the size of it, because if we look at this next here, I guess that's a little bit bigger. Yeah, and our continents and our regions are a little bit random, or not by random, they're a little arbitrary. So, are there similarities or differences? And there's similarities or differences within these regions that might be as big as, between the regions. And I think the classic example is right here, and that's the Mediterranean Sea. The area around the Mediterranean's in three different regions, according to the College Board, but there's really going to be a lot of similarities, also differences in between those areas. It's just a way to help you understand what might be meant if you see the word regional in a question. Really, oh, thank you, Kayla. And she names the regions. That is good. And what you see here is that it is, kind of the same size. Or if we were to put one in China, which is quite large, we would have that, right? So interregional. Again, this is to help you understand the questions. Now, one way that you might get, yeah, thanks, Maddie. So if we take a look at this slide here, then, one way that this fits into these power vocabulary words that we're using is that commercial practices are often associated with particular regions, not necessarily interregional, because there needs to be some sort of agreement, or at least this is just one way to think of it, some sort of agreement amongst the merchants over what is, or what are the rules of the game. And there's usually some sort of state power. So this is a picture of flying cash. Here's a term that you might have heard, which is also another word for paper money or banknotes. And this is from the Song Dynasty. And so it's, this is pretty old money right here. And there's some other examples there that you might know. You can ask, have you heard of those? Which ones of those did you read about in your book or cover in your class? Can you attach the regions for like SOC or bills of exchange? Sometimes bills of trade. Where some of those are from. You go ahead. Yeah. In a region, there's yeah. So where none? Okay. Well, this is one of those things. So for Katie there, where you would getting one down is going to help you. So flying cash is a term that was used, and you can see on the top of this how there's an image of coins. So this is how many coins this is supposed to be. The Mongols did use the Mongol dynasty, and I guess some of the other Mongol states, did use paper money. Yep. So it's going to be back. So these are commercial practices, and what they're going to allow is more trade over larger distance. But they tend to be more regional because there has to be agreement, and there's often like a common state. Like this is from the Song Dynasty that's there. Plus, remember, like that porcelain we saw from China in the first slide, that didn't travel in one trip from China all the way to East Africa. It probably made several stops. So there's probably multiple commercial practices along the way, different kinds of buying and selling and trading and things like that. Okay. Yeah, well, the thing with China, right, they made paper, so they're going to get to paper money before some other people. Plus, there's this large internal market. The story with flying cash is that the merchants, like their horses were getting bruises on them from all the copper coins they were carrying. And so this is a way to do that. So it's easier to carry. It's easier to carry this. No, this diffusion would be So if you think of this is a commercial practice. What would be diffusion, though, is when these different ideas of paper money, when they spread to other places. Okay, it's called flying cash. There's an expression, that's why it's in quotation marks. And if you called it paper money, you'd be just fine. Though the flying part is that it could be used across greater distance. Right. Yeah. So, right. Like if you were to take this bill to the other end of the Silk Roads, you wouldn't be able to get anything for it. That's what makes it regional. So then you can, but within China, they called it that because then you could carry more of it. Like literally, there was so much commerce in China that the use of coins was becoming physically difficult to move the amount of coins it took to buy things. All right. So these would be some terms that you might, jot down. Again, you're not going to be in a situation where you have to know all of them, but you would be in a situation maybe where you'd use one as an example. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these inter-regional exchange networks. So inter-regional is where we're going to see more of these transportation technologies. Does anyone know what this is? Yeah, the flying cash, Anna, would probably only be of use in China. I don't really know. That'd be an interesting question over time. It would carry on. China. China for flying cash. Yeah. No, it's not a compass. Oh, somebody knows. Let's see if we can. There we go. Those are different ways. There weren't really currencies yet, Samir. No, it's okay to ask that question with the commercial techniques. So they would function in different places, and they would usually denote how much of a hard currency they were worth. Again, that's part of why it's regional. So on that Chinese banknote, I think it had 8 copper coins up there. It's like that's how much this is. So a check or a sock in the Middle East, someone would write down this is worth such and such number probably of silver coins. And in Europe, maybe gold coins. Yeah, this is an astrolabe. Nice work, kids. It is, right? So when we look at inter-regional networks, we're looking at transportation technologies. So it's useful to separate those out, I think, into maritime and land-based. So maritime means sea. Yeah, and it's okay if you don't know what this is, but some people probably studied it. So these are terms for ships from China and from the Western Indian Ocean, respectively, that you might use. Yeah, the way that, well, I'll tell you what the astrolabe worked when I put it up on the thing here. And then there's also, these are all navigation. So this is the middle one, the astrolabe. And people would use it for determining the angle that the sun or another heavenly body, something in the sky was at. So the angle that the sun is at is going to tell someone where they are on the globe in terms of latitude, like north or south or distance from the equator. Okay. It doesn't, you could use it, I think, by keeping track of the sun. It's really just a way of getting like an angle, like measuring that. Right. Yep. Yep, Emily has it. Of course, you could go full Polynesian, just use your hand, but this would be for people who need instruments. Okay. These other things also, so these are also examples of diffusion because they spread between regions. So the astrolabe was something that existed in the Mediterranean regional trade and then later diffused or spread into the Indian Ocean and would have diffused across the Indian Ocean. Same thing, compass and rudder, at least the stern posted rudder, are both Chinese originally, and they diffuse across the Indian Ocean in the other direction. So eventually we'll see when I do my Unit 4 where we get some mashups of these things. I mean, I imagine. I think that probably would have had multiple uses. And then with land, the big thing we were looking at is, of course, the camel saddle. All right. Now, for the last 20 minutes, we're going to take a look more closely at these 4 networks. This is the other thing that you might find useful to write down. And I'll have these words on the slides when they come up again. So you don't necessarily need to scroll this down at top speed right now. But when you look at each of these routes, these trade networks, one of the things I noticed looking at the course and exam description is that there's going to be some component of geography you should know, like what's the human environment interaction that is affecting this. What's being exchanged? You should be able to name some trade goods, and also some other kinds of diffusion, cultural, biological, technological. And you should be able to name some of the societies that were involved. So we say Silk Roads, like who's involved? Like, oh, China. So you would do that. All right. So we'll go ahead and take a look at these. So for each one, I have these same 3 bullets up, and then we can see, so what's the big geographic feature as in terms of the human environment interaction when we talk about the Indian Ocean? I say Indian Ocean, and you say what? Ooh, random capitalization there. Didn't mean to go like Indian, like Indiana. Right on. Right. And what is useful about the monsoon winds? Way to get there first with monsoon, Kayla. I bet other kids knew that fast. Well, there are, because if you think of the world's 4 biggest religions, or 5 biggest religions, they're mostly going to all diffuse through the Indian Ocean. There's Christianity a bit, but certainly Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism, Sikhism to some degree diffuse in that area, right? Makes traveling faster. And remember, the thing with the monsoons is, the thing with the monsoons is, you see those 2 arrows on there? The thing with the monsoons is, for part of the year, they blow consistently in the same direction. And so it's predictable, and they change direction. So you can use them to go somewhere, and then if you wait, you can come back. And what it allowed is, if you see on the map here, like this route here across the Indian Ocean, where they're not right up against the land, like people would not, the ships weren't big enough. There wasn't enough supplies in the ships for a crew to go from here all the way to southwestern India and get lost and have everyone survive. Like, they had to know that they could head out and that the wind would consistently blow in that direction. And so then that allowed them to take these shorter cuts. But with the monsoon winds, what do people have to do once they get to where they're going before they come back? Yeah. Yes, it does. So monsoon pattern. Now, when the monsoon can also refer, so in world history, when we talk about monsoon winds, we're talking about the pattern of the winds. Now, in India and other Southeast Asian societies, when people talk about the monsoon, they mean when the rain comes. Because what happens is, the winds, when it's blowing toward India, is going across the Indian Ocean, and it's picking up moisture, and it's real hot. And it gets there, and eventually the wind are blowing, they're blowing toward the Himalayas, and then when they get to the Himalayas, it's cold, and the water vapor condenses, and it rains, like, a lot. So that's what the monsoon is, that rain. But in world history, when we say that, we're more interested in the pattern of winds, and it's people understanding how to use them. So people mentioned religion, so you would want to know some religions that spread here. Buddhism and Islam would be the 2 most important religions that spread through, or the most effect spreading through the Indian Ocean. You'd also want some products. So you have some goods, so like India with cotton textiles, and China with porcelain, silk textiles, ivory, the finer spices from over here in this area in far Southeast Asia. Okay, and then which societies are there? So as you're going through your chart, then you might just add some of those things in. Ooh, Gujarat, that is nice. So Gujarat is the part of India that's in the more northern part, northwest India, and it's a prime trading area, and still has been for a long time. Okay. So you'd have some societies. You could name some of the places in India. The Swahili coast would come in here. Southeast Asia, you might name an empire or two, like the Khmer Empire or the Majapahit Empire. But again, remember, it's always the case you don't have to know everything if you can think of something there. Yep, that's right. That's right. I mean, Kayla's got Swahili. All right, let's do another one. Ooh, yep, Strait of Malacca is going to be part of that. So with the Silk Roads, then, what kind of geographic factors might come into play here? Ooh, yeah, Srivijaya, that's a good one. Shivani. Okay, be all right. What's the land like? Yeah, so like well, the map shows the locations, but yeah, I'm not Silk routes would go a long time before the Mongols. Mongols capitalize on that. So for locations for Indian Ocean, you're looking at East Africa, Middle East, India, like all the coasts of India, which are of course going to be different societies, and then Southeast Asia. And China is connected in. The monsoon wind pattern actually affects the South China Sea too, so it'll make trading in and out of China easier. Yeah, the temperatures can be really extreme here. Yep, and horse saddles developed sooner than camel saddles, which turns out the horse a little easier to domesticate than the camel. Not quite as big, not quite as mean. So you got that. Oh yeah. Now, what's a caravanserai, Emily? That is from way downtown. That's an expression, kids, for a basketball shot made from a long distance. So we have a caravanserai is a classic example of something where you could see that environmental effect. Because caravanserais were areas that were used for people to stay over, and their animals could be there, but they were like big courtyards. Yeah, right. Kayla's got the idea in the chat there. But that's because of the hot, dry, windy climate that you'd need shelter from the winds in order to stay safe in those places where you could rest. And so setting those up was important. Okay. So we have this. There are mountains to avoid. You can see, like on the map here, up the Tibetan plateau, there's not much going. There's some blank spots. There's also some deserts where there's blank spots, where people aren't traveling. So we see that. In terms of exchange, we have religions, again, Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam would be the biggest ones on the Silk Roads. And then a lot of students seem to here tonight seem to have camel parking lot. I like that. Seem to have some knowledge about some of the other diffusion, like gunpowder and paper from China. Yes, the plague did spread along this route. The plague bacterium, Yersinia pestis, is sort of indigenous, has lived in rodents in Central Asia for a long time. Now today it's, other things, it's been diffused. You can get the plague in the United States, but it's bacterial. So if you get antibiotics, you're okay. But, be careful with prairie dogs, kids, like more careful than you might have thought. Okay. There was some Christianity spread on sea routes too, especially in the Mediterranean And then later, when we get to the global age, into the Americas, see travel there. But Christianity would have spread here more across, I think, the land routes. You should know that Christianity in the East too is different. They call it Church of the East. It's not totally different. It's still Christian, so Jesus as the Christ, the Anointed One. But there are some differences. Okay. So we're also looking at societies. We have our kind of anchor societies here, China, and then the Mediterranean societies, so like the Islamic caliphates. Then you have all these trading cities in between. Okay. I'm not sure what you mean by which order, Erica. These things are all happening at the same time, so we can kind of do them in any order. The bubonic plague, a plague would have spread during the Columbian Exchange too, but that's going to be later. No, the Crusades comes much later, and there have been Christians in that part of the world for a long time. Oh, I see. This here is, I screenshot it. This is like, yeah, 1200. Yep, those things are true. But the plague is part of it. It's just not one of the ones that has the biggest demographic effects when we do Unit 4. So Christianity, there's merchants and missionaries who spread the religion across trade routes like the Mediterranean trade, regional trade network, and then out across the Silk Roads, and then adopted by some monarchs in Europe and especially, and then enforcing that amongst their subjects. Okay. Yeah, the Black Death was a name that was given slightly later for the bubonic version of the plague that was so deadly in Europe during this spread. It's probably the deadliest pandemic in history. Samarkand for the win. Thank you, Michael. Knowing a couple trading cities could be useful as well. Kashgar. So just knowing that there's also city-states in between. So when we look at societies, it's not just big empires like Song China, but also, city-states like Samarkand that were sometimes part of larger empires and sometimes not. Okay. All right, so Silk Roads are related to the Mongols. Oh yeah, that would be a good one there. Srikar's got Baghdad. Okay. So in some ways, we can look at the Mongol Empire that because it's the Mongols is so big that it's an interregional network. What I mean by that is some of the things that we looked at with the regional networks with one state creating like common rules and facilitating trade, that is something that was more characteristic of a regional trade route. It's just that when you're the Mongol Empire, your region is Eurasia. So it gets quite large. So this has just got a little bit of a Temujin would later go by Chinggis Khan. And some of this is about military organization. So these details that are coming up now are not essential. Yeah, the Mongols is fun to talk about. There's just, I don't know what it is. It just is. It's endlessly fascinating. So these are things that were innovations that allowed them that were part of their conquest. But then some of these other things are ways that they encourage commerce by creating a common law code across this large area, or especially regions of the area. That's going to encourage commerce. Islam does the same thing, by the way. So when Islam spreads, one of the reasons or one of the benefits for adopting Islam from a merchant's point of view is they're in a common ethical framework with other merchants. And so the Mongols do that secular law, right? Oh yeah, good stuff there. So then all these other things are things that are going to encourage exchange. Now, most famously, you should know that the Mongol Empire encouraged exchange because they promoted trade. They didn't allow, or they had tried to keep individual cities or individual rulers or criminals from stopping trade. So, if I was a bandit and the Mongols told me to knock it off, I might update my resume. You know what I'm saying? kind of get there in the job market, see what's going on. So they kind of encourage that. Of course, the Mongols themselves also, destroyed a lot of things. When they burned Baghdad, that's going to put commerce back a little bit. So it's complicated. Yes, Shivani, they're generally speaking religiously tolerant because as nomads, they'd interacted with people within Mongol ruling families. You'll see multiple religions. There'll be like Kublai Khan's wife, who's a Christian, but then, he might also have, he's got some Muslim nephews who are ruling the Ilkhanates. So there's no like religious dogmatism going on. Mm-hmm. All right, one more network here for us. Let me see. So that's the Trans-Saharan Network. Now we got good hints in the name, and that's so what's the geography situation here? Yeah. And this is one where a lot of students know the main exchange. Yeah, so what was the main exchange? Or like what are the big trade exchange goods? Yeah. Yes. If you associate Mali, kingdom, or empire with this, that is really good to know. That will work. There's also, because the Ghana Empire that came before that is outside the time period. Mali is, smack at the beginning of the time period. Yeah, there was that. So salt and gold. But no, there's also a lot of ideas, religion and Arabic writing and learning will diffuse also. I'm not sure there was a slave trade here in the Trans-Saharan trade. I guess it's really worth saying that there would have been human trafficking along all of the trade routes that we're looking at. And there's always textiles. Oh, King Dan of Denmark, who was like a real all-star in these chats last year and is a TA now, he would say the answer is always textiles. Like you can almost always answer textiles. It's not totally wrong with that. Yeah. So there would have been trafficking, trade and enslaved people, but it would not have been like this trade network is not necessarily overrepresented in that. There are a lot of humans being trafficked as slaves in the Mediterranean and the Black Seas, as example, and across the Silk Roads and in the Indian Ocean. It's happening in a lot of places. Okay. So exchange here, I would say the gold salt trade is what's kind of the wheels of this, moving it along. And then the diffusion of Islam and Arabic learning. And then for societies, yes, Mali Empire would be good. Okay. We'll make one quick note of this here as another network. And just to know that this isn't in the official course and exam description, but I think it's also important for students to know that exchange wasn't only an Afro-Eurasian thing. Plus, we got this quote here from Robert Strayer. Who the Strayer heads out there? The Zimbabwe, just in Africa, is in southern Africa, and the gold from Zimbabwe would have gone into the Indian Ocean networks off the Swahili coast. So Great Zimbabwe, Ethiopia are two more real good examples for this time period. So I have this here. Yeah. Did you use Strayer? Yeah, I guess, Natalie. Yeah. Ways of the World, that's the one. So just to know that there are things moving around. And really the best example of that is another one of the world, history 100 objects. I started with one and I'm closing with another. So around here we see this amazing double-headed serpent. College board, could take exchange in the Americas out of the curriculum, but they're going to, they'll buying this turquoise double-headed serpent from my cold dead hands. Oh, the earth and its peoples. And that covers everything like that. So you see here that the turquoise is from what's today southwestern United States, but the shells are from somewhere else. There's also beeswax and conch shells for the teeth. So the materials in this come from all these places coming together, showing that exchange. All right. For the next, nice. What look through your textbook is go back to that chart that I made or the power vocab and just look for examples. Look for examples of these things. What you really want to do is be able to take things you already know a little bit and attach them to a concept that you can use in writing or that you can recognize if you're doing a multiple choice question. So this has been delightful, and I'm excited to come back and do transoceanic connections. We'll take our maritime technology global. So as always, go ahead and stay in touch across the socials. Lots of good stuff. And keep it going in Discord. I know that Natalie will be in there helping everybody out. And I've had a really great time. So I'm going to go ahead and oh, before I stop, now I'm going to try to do this poll thing again because I did have a poll set up for the, let's see if this opens there. You know, if the poll comes up. Oh, I'm going to try here. This is for Melissa for next time. Thank you. It's been really nice seeing you. I enjoyed talking to some of you in the chat before. You bring your questions. And if questions bubble up in Discord, Natalie will tell Melissa or me, whoever's streaming next, and you can say, I really want to know about this. And if other kids want to too, we'll shape that. I did that whole regional thing based on the feedback from there. Yeah. Well, good to see you, Alexa, or your name and your generic face, smiley face there. Yes, thank you, Anna. I feel like there's been some polling fail on my end. So we'll just see. You can pop off in the Discord about which of the land-based empires you are interested in knowing about. So, all right. Bye-bye. Have a good night, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing so I can wave it out. Yay. Yay. And I'm going to end the stream.